Hello everybody, here we are today talking about the first round of the playoffs and how it's kind of been a breath of fresh air. But before we get started with that, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. Being said, let's get on into it. So to kick things off, I would like to apologize. The mic that I normally use seems to be kind of broken, so we're going to have to hold it because the little pin that, keeps it pinned to my shirt isn't working, so that's great. We'll get that figured out for the next video. Anyway, talking about the first round so far, I think there have been a handful of series that make things a little bit more interesting. The first one is that the Flyers avoid the reverse sweep. Philadelphia has been a team that has not been a playoff mainstay in the past few years. In fact, this was the first time that they had made the postseason since 2020. They take on the Penguins. Things look really good. They go up in the series 3-0. However, the Pens win games 4 and 5, and then game 6 goes into sudden death overtime. You start to think maybe this is where everything unravels for the Flyers. Gritty, gets a little nervous, and instead they're able to get a Game 6 winner, and that advances them on in the next series. Absolutely huge for them because this is just the second time that they have gone on to the second round or further in the playoffs since 2012. This is also really big over a in-state rival that has had much more success in the playoffs dating back to the past 15-ish years. And just a great series all around to see a surprise team. I mean, I didn't expect Philadelphia to make it to the playoffs this year, and now we are not only seeing them knock off some of the guys like Crosby and Malkin and whatnot, but possibly go out there and maybe upset the Hurricanes, a team that they have got a little bit of familiarity with there. But yes, the city of brotherly love is getting excited. And then another series that I think is giving us a little bit of that breath of fresh air, if you will, is the Anaheim-Edmonton series as the Ducks oust the Oilers. Edmonton has won 9 series in the postseason since the last time the Ducks made the playoffs, and this was a experienced side, a talented side, a group that was expected to try to go out and shake off what was a pretty bad regular season by their standards, and they were going to be taking on a relatively young and inexperienced Ducks squad. Yes, they have some of the underwhelming, or I guess kind of hidden veteran experience on their roster. They've got guys like Killorn, they've got some other guys. However, this was going to be something we expected more of the mainstays of that youthful Ducks squad to go out there and challenge, and they really did just put it to Edmonton in this series. They scored 4 goals or more in 4 games in this round, and the only game that they failed to score less than 3 goals was one. I think they had a game where they scored maybe 1 or 2. I believe it was 1 goal that they scored in game 5. Either way, they were able to score early and often, and this was a series that I highlighted where I think we all kind of expected it to be a rather high-scoring affair. I thought Edmonton would go out there and get the job done. However, Anaheim, with this, is able to knock off the 2-time defending Western Conference champions and win a playoff series for the first time since 2017. Meanwhile, Edmonton, having a shorter postseason than they had hoped, are not advancing in the playoffs for the first time since 2021. And of course, the Ducks are now wondering who they'll face in round 2. And if we're talking about another series that was exciting here and giving us a little bit of a new glimpse of what the playoff picture could be, Minnesota beating Dallas was big. Edmonton and Dallas had played each other a bunch of times late in the playoffs in the Western Conference. So to know that neither one of these teams are going to be in that picture after the first round is big. The Wild are getting a big bump here too as well because they were down 2-1 in this series and rattled off 3 straight wins. It looked like it was going to be possibly another early exit, but guess what? They got the job done in Game 6 at home rather than having to worry about Game 7 in Dallas. And this is also big too, as it is Minnesota's first playoff series win since 2015. Mind you, just to give you a little bit of perspective, I didn't even know my wife at the time existed, as we would meet a little bit later. So it's been a minute. I think for the Wild, they had garnered a little bit of a reputation as being the new Toronto Maple Leafs, a side that made the playoffs regularly, however, were not able to advance at all, really. They had 8 postseason trips since their last time that they advanced in the playoffs, and there was a lot of heartbreak over the way. There were some years they really probably should have been going a little bit further. However, it didn't happen. But this time, that is all put behind them, and they are rewarded by having to go on to play Colorado in the next round. It's going to be a tall task. However, for the Wild, this is great. You get to see guys like Boldy average a goal per game in the series, and you just were able to look at some of these other guys, too, that maybe didn't have as great of a series on paper, chip in at the right moment. Then you have, of course, guys like Quinn Hughes that played a factor in that final game of that series. And the Wild, of course, now thinking maybe for the first time in over 20 years, we can go into the conference final. I have to see if that actually happens. But maybe, just maybe, after they took down the 3rd best team in the league. Now, as for some other thoughts as to why this is a little bit fun, I think there is a reality that tonight maybe Buffalo wins their series. That would be the first series that they win since 2007. Absolutely huge. Montreal has a chance to end their series against Tampa Bay. Montreal recently did go to the Stanley Cup Final within the past 5 years, so it's not like they haven't won a postseason series in a minute. However, for a while, there has not been a consistent playoff caliber team in, of course, Quebec, and not a team that is able to go on runs. I do feel very excited about this, and I think the Atlantic, of course, is shaping up to be very, very, very good. And in general, you would see teams like Minnesota, Philly, of course, you're seeing teams like Anaheim, and then Buffalo that haven't really been able to be on that upper end for a while now. And I think that the playoffs have been stale in some degree as the teams that are making it and winning and whatnot. However, I don't think we're out of the woods just yet. I do think that the second round is going to decide a lot of things. If we theoretically see some upsets, that'd be fantastic. But there is a world still where we see a Carolina and a Tampa Bay conference final, or a Colorado Vegas series. Not saying that those would be bad, conference finals. However, they are teams we'd expect to be there. And then, of course, there's a talk that out west, I do feel like there is a little bit more of attention, especially even from me, where we are looking at teams in the Central, as those are the top-heavy teams. Not to say that the Pacific teams couldn't theoretically win the Stanley Cup. However, I think that with every team that loses from the Central, you start to get more worried about there being a less qualified team in the Stanley Cup final, if that's kind of your thing. However, at the end of the day, Minnesota takes out a Central team, just how the playoff format works, and whoever wins the Minnesota-Colorado series will, of course, be a deserving conference finalist. And then Utah's kind of hanging out there. We'll have to see. But I am really curious to see if the Atlantic Division and the Pacific Division shake things up in terms of what we've expected over the years in the playoff picture and bring in some of this new blood. And I am hoping, regardless, that we just get some great series. What do you think of all this so far? Is this exciting? Do you care? Is it more of you just want to see the more deserving teams win, or do you want to see a little bit of those new teams going to break through? Let me know your thoughts down below as to the first round of the playoffs so far. And also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you love hockey, all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.